Advertising on Amazon is really, really easy. Said no one ever. In reality, it is fairly easy once you get to understand what you're actually supposed to do. But one of the areas I see a lot of people failing is not knowing how to understand their impressions. Why aren't they getting impressions if they aren't on their ads? What to do about it? And what are some common signs and reasons you aren't getting any impressions on the ads? So we're going to dig into that. And on here today, we have a specific account that came to us. It's a newer account, and we're going to just dig through some of the reasons and causes behind what could cause such low impressions like this one, where it has only 2,324 essentially over the last 30 days. And this is under 500 impressions with 49 total campaigns. So, with that, the first and foremost thing that you always want to look at, and for this account, thankfully, it's not the case, but for a lot of accounts, I do see people are saying their budgets, daily budgets, way too low. That is number one. Always check your daily budgets. This account has decent daily budgets for what it's trying to do. Somewhat, I will say. There's a lot of different variation we can be doing here. But overall, one of the biggest things that you need to understand when you are looking at your daily budget is also understanding how much your keywords cost and what you need to do. So looking at this, you can see that some of these we only have $5. Well, we're going to get into how that can be an issue here in just a little bit. So moving next, the next thing that I typically see, we're going to jump into one of these campaigns here. 165 impressions over the last month. We have, a couple of keywords in here, total 8, and you'll notice a few things immediately. One of the first ones that I am going to notice is this suggested bid. We have a couple of keywords here where it says no current data. Now, when you see no current data, it means one of two things. One, Amazon's just not displaying it because there's not a lot of people who are advertising against it. But more likely than not, it is because there is not any search volume for that keyword. When there is not any search volume for a keyword, you are not going to get impressions for it. Even if there is some search volume, if it's very, very low, it's very hard for Amazon to have data on that because they're not going to know. So if we, for instance, take this keyword here and we copy that, we come on over to Amazon, we'll just type that in real quick. You can see from a helium perspective, for the actual search volume, we have no search volume. We have a lot of competing products for it, but no search volume whatsoever. So from that perspective, this keyword that we're actually trying to hit on has no search volume. So that is why we're not getting any impressions. So search volume is very, very important. And you can very easily distinguish that a lot of times when you are looking for that suggested bid. Now, the issue with going against keywords as well that have no search volume is when you do get an impression and you do get a click, so you can see that we do have 7 impressions here, and we do have 1 click, it's going to cost you exactly what your bid is. If you end up trying to go up and up, and this goes into our next one, which is going into bids, and understanding that if you keep raising your bid just to get more impressions, that is not always what you're supposed to do, and you need to identify if search volume and relevancy are actually still playing a factor. Now, on to bids. Always check your bids. You should make sure that your bids are competitive. You can see here, this one is fairly competitive. Again, I would be curious to see what actual search volume is. We can easily take that. Again, check search volume. It looks like this one will have not really any search volume, tiny amount of search volume, not something that's going to be super easy to compete against again. So that's why we don't have many impressions, even though we have a very high bid. But our average cost per click is only $2.29. So we likely raised this very recently. Now, coming over to this one, you can see, and this is just another competitor campaign, 2 impressions. We're going against specific products. You can see here, all of the bids are 94 cents. Now, why is this an issue? Well, one, we don't have any impressions. We have 2, I should say, but we don't really have any. And then you can see suggested bid for most of these. It's ranging everywhere from 94 cents for suggestion all the way up to, $5.50, right? So when you are putting in your bid, a very common issue I see, especially with trying to get more impressions, is that people are afraid to raise their bids. They think that Amazon is just going to charge them anything, which in a lot of cases they will. But the biggest thing you have to understand is that the only way to get impressions is to get seen. The only way to get seen is make sure 2 things. 1, you're relevant. And 2, your product actually is ranking and indexing. And that brings us to our next point. Our next point would be the ranking and indexing. And again, if we come back over to these competitors, we're competing in very, very high search volume, high niche products, right? So if you're dealing with supplements, if you're dealing with beauty brands, anything like that, you're going to have a lot of competition. And when you have a lot of competition, it's going to be very difficult for you with underbidding keywords, such as we are doing here, to actually get any of that impression share, because they likely will have a lot of self-targeting campaigns. They'll likely be fueling off of their own organic and their own paid as well. And so it's going to be very difficult. So all of these, I would typically say almost stay away from if you're a brand new seller. If you aren't and you're okay with throwing some money at the wall, go ahead and raise these. Now, hopping on back over to our other campaign here, there's a few other things to take note of when you have no impressions. One of the biggest ones to understand, obviously, we've already gone over the no current data. We've gone over the bids. We've gone over the idea that if you get a click, you're going to pay whatever it is you're doing. And so you shouldn't always rely off of bids. But more so, we touched on already, but relevancy. How relevant is the actual keyword to your product? All of these keywords are fairly the same. You can definitely look to see relevancy, but more so than not, you should base relevancy off of who your primary competition is, and not, the top of your category, but people who are generally ranked around the same as you, or people within the top 500 that you're trying to get to, right? Take who you believe to be your top competitors, throw them into Helium 10, and get an understanding of where they are ranking for keywords. If you are focused on just a paid ranking strategy with keywords and you are trying to really drive that, but not getting any impressions, it's likely that you are getting beaten out by one, competition, and two, just the fact of relevancy of your actual product. And Amazon judges that again by keyword ranking. You have your overall ranking of your product, and then you have indexing, which is anything over 500, and then you have ranking, anything under 500. So focus more on the idea of relevancy when doing it, because I see so often people will throw keywords in just for the idea of throwing a keyword in. Just because it's Christmas time doesn't mean that you have to throw the keyword Christmas in and try and compete on it, right? So overall, when we are looking at impressions and reasons why it might be happening that you're not getting any impressions or very little impressions, first and foremost, check your budgets. Make sure your budget makes sense for your campaign and your bids. Secondly, off of that, make sure that when you are going and doing all of your data and your keyword research, choosing keywords with search volume and relevancy, right? That is always going to be a really, really crucial factor when going through the process of adding keywords to campaigns. Next, you always want to make sure that if you do have relevancy and you do have search volume, that your bid is well optimized. Do not be afraid to start a little high. If you are going to be constantly checking your campaign, start a little bit higher, and that will be fine because you can instantly see, okay, here's where I'm getting impressions, here's where I'm getting clicks, here is where I can optimize and downbid it, lower that overall bid. And then on top of that, make sure that if you are going into a very, very competitive niche, that you're not just going after the top dog, right? It's very, very difficult when you go after the number one in the category. Try and go after some people who are similar in vein to your product and who you can target on a product page perspective and maybe take a couple of sales away here and there. The big thing is you always are going to need that search volume when you're targeting any type of keyword, any type of product. More so than not, it usually comes down to an idea of how you bid and where you're actually bidding.